A fatal plane crash in the British Virgin Islands. That's our top story in Caribbean Newsline for Thursday, July 19. From the CMC News Center in Bridgetown, I'm Nicole Best. Good evening. The body of a pilot was pulled from the waters of Terrace B. Lettsome International Airport on Wednesday after his plane crashed in the sea during takeoff. The plane had been headed to Pointe Pitre International Airport in Guadeloupe. The pilot, whose name has not been disclosed, was the only person on board when the aircraft overran the runway and ended up in the sea near Trellis Bay. Virgin Islands Search and Rescue Team, that's team member Phil Aspinall, said police information suggested the pilot was an Angola national with a United States passport. The Virgin Islands Search and Rescue Team said when they arrived at the scene after being notified by the U.S. Coast Guard around 4 p.m. on Wednesday, they found the Cessna C-150 plane in the water near the end of the runway. The pilot had already been pulled from the wreckage but subsequently died. The airport had to be closed to facilitate the recovery of the body and what was left of the plane. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness says the state of public emergency in St. James is not only reducing crime in that parish but has resulted in a downward trend in the daily murder rate. There were 51 murders in the St. James Police Division for the period January 1 to July 7th, representing a 67% decrease when compared to corresponding period last year. And Holness said that from the point of the declaration of the state of emergency on January 18, the average daily murders have fallen from 4.65 to 3.44 nationally. On Tuesday, the House of Representatives passed a resolution extending the state of emergency measures until November 1. And Prime Minister Holness said the security forces are going after more wanted people as well as the financiers and main facilitators of crime. Staying in Jamaica, the Ministry of Justice and the National Task Force Against the Trafficking in Persons say they have been yielding success in their battle against human trafficking, and they've outlined more plans to further deal with the scourge. We get the details in this TVJ News report.
Since 2010, NATFA-TIP has conducted over 750 operations clamping down on suspected cases of human trafficking. Head of the JCF's Anti-Trafficking in Persons Unit, DSP Carl Berry, said 82 victims have been rescued so far. 3 prostitution rings have also been dismantled and 30 suspected traffickers have been arrested. So far, 5 convictions have been made, with some 18 cases still before the court. One of the convictions was in February of a female, Ocean Morgan.
She, as very young, found an even younger girl. She befriended. They made contact. She lured that girl away from home and facilitated prostitution of that female. And as a result, it culminated in her pleading guilty before the High Court.
She is to be sentenced later this year. As a result of these successes, DSP Berry says Jamaica's international standing in the fight against human trafficking has improved. The island is no longer classified by the U.S. State Department as a transit state, but a problem still exists with Jamaica being referred to as a source and destination country. Permanent Secretary in the Justice Ministry, Carol Palmer, says the fight is now being bolstered through the partnership with the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, UCC. This will provide education and training for team members as well as increased public awareness. This year's Trafficking in Persons Week events begin on July 22 and will extend to World Day Against Trafficking in Persons on July 30.
We hope that the attention and public discourse that will emanate from the week's activities will continue to raise awareness about the plight of victims and why it is necessary for not just a whole of government, which is what we have at the task force, but as I said last year, a whole of country response. And in fact, I dare say, a global response.
Over in Guyana, Minister of Public Security Kemraj Ramjatan says government is committed to providing the necessary resources to the local anti-trafficking organization and to work with international partners to bring an end to human trafficking. He made the declaration on Wednesday at the opening of a 2-day training in trafficking in persons for the Corps of Wardens attached to the Ministry of Natural Resources.
Some do it for body parts, which is the worst. extreme. Some do it for labor practices, some for sexual exploitation and all of that. But it is still slavery. It is still repugnant and appalling. We don't want that to happen to our mothers and sisters, do we? So then we must not allow it to happen to other people's children.
Minister Ramjatan opened a 2-day training course in trafficking in persons for the Corps of Wardens attached to the Ministry of Natural Resources. He urged the participants to never compromise on the principles of law, even if the perpetrators are their relatives and friends. The minister said it is important that everything is done to ensure the recently achieved Tier 1 status is maintained and sustained for a long time.
When we took government, we were in what is called a Tier 2 watch list, which is right down there in relation to trafficking in humans. Because of the work the ministry and other ministries and members of the task force that we formed have done, it has helped us now from Tier 3, which is watch list Tier 2, we then improved to watch list 2, and today we are Tier 1.
In St. Kitts and Nevis, Chief Immigration Officer Mercelyn Hughes has given the first glimpse into major changes that will be made to the Immigration Department when it separates from the police force. An enforcement unit will be set up and will be tasked with reducing illegal immigration and human trafficking. The members of the unit will conduct standard operations such as intelligence gathering and visits to job sites. Visits are currently undertaken by police officers attached to the Immigration Department. The Chief Immigration Officer said the changes that will come to with the separation of the Immigration Department and police force will take some time, and she asked the public to be patient. She said there will be a public education campaign to get residents and visitors familiar with the adjustments. And still to come in Caribbean Newsline, Grenada campaigning to get Canada to lift visa restrictions. The details after the break. Do stay with us.
This month on Caribbean Passport, we travel the region taking in Grenada Spice Mass, Barbados Crop Over, Antigua Summer Festival, and so much more, all coming up on this station.
Grenada's Foreign Affairs Minister Peter David says the island is among regional countries continuing to campaign for Canada to lift visa restrictions. His comments came as Canada prepares to impose even more stringent visa policies. Under a new requirement to be implemented in December this year, all Caribbean citizens who require visas will have to travel to Trinidad to get them rather than being able to mail their documents in. The foreign minister spoke about the issue during a sitting of the House of Representatives on Wednesday.
We have said to the Canadian government that we believe that is a step in the wrong direction in terms of the relations between Canada and CARICOM. And I make a public statement so that the Canadian government understands that this is a matter that concerns our people. Now imagine a family of 3 goes to Trinidad, as it's the same situation with Barbados, and we have said the same thing to the U.S. government. You go, you raise your money, you go to Trinidad, you raise $10,000 and they tell you you can't get a visa. Imagine the devastating impact that has on the finances of our people. So we have been trying to work hard with the Canadian government to see if something can be done about that. The traditional relationship between Canada and the governments of the region should require the Canadian government to take note of that.
As Bahamians continue to grapple with the steep increase in value-added tax from 7.5% to 12%, one banker is saying the government had no choice but to impose the hike. President of the Commonwealth Bank in the Bahamas, Raymond Winder, believes the protracted poor state of the country's economy left the government of Dr. Hubert Minnis with no other options. We get more in this report from Sieska Adderley of ZNS Network News.
Incoming president of Commonwealth Bank Raymond Winder describes the country's cash-based accounting process as being in a poor state for many years, and that's why he says government had to address the issue before it gets any worse. He noted how the current format won't work, so Bahamians must understand government's reasoning for increasing the value-added tax rate to 12%.
Most governments around the world use what we call a modified accrual basis, where the government captured those kinds of items as they go through the day-to-day operation. So at any given point in time, they know what are their commitments and what do they have left over to spend in the future. And so hopefully the value-added tax would be a part of helping the government realign those finances as they go forward.
And while adjusting to this increase may be challenging for some initially, Winder says it's too early to determine whether that rate is sufficient.
We don't know if we may have a hurricane. If we have a hurricane, all bets are off. It's a brand new day, okay, in terms of the potential financial impact. That's how serious the situation is. So when we, the only thing I would hope and say and think is that the government will adjust whatever needs to be adjusted as they progress through the financial year.
But beyond the increase to value-added tax, the incoming Commonwealth Bank head says it's an interesting time for the financial services sector as a whole, and stakeholders must now explore new markets in order for the jurisdiction to remain competitive.
We cannot rely on the old rules of confidentiality. We must, in fact, bring real value to the table to substantiate why someone would want to come and do business in the Bahamas. But I'm a strong believer that because of where we're located, because of our experience historically as a jurisdiction in these areas, we still have opportunities. Obviously, we're going to have to fight real hard. We're going to have to work real hard because the competition is keener.
Barbadian undergraduate students at the Cayville campus of the University of the West Indies are officially getting free tuition again. The university says it has finally received official word from the Ministry of Education confirming that government will indeed cover the costs from the upcoming academic year. The confirmation followed concerns raised last week by parents and students who had complained they were being told by UWI they would have to meet the tuition costs themselves in the absence of official word from government. Director of Communications Chelston Lovell told online newspaper Barbados Today that the university has been given the necessary assurances and has received the requisite correspondence about the new policy becoming effective from the coming semester. The policy is a reversal of the decision made by the then governing Democratic Labour Party in 2013, which took effect the following year for UWI students to begin paying for tertiary education. And in Antigua and Barbuda, Parliament has taken another step toward the establishment of the fourth landed campus of the University of the West Indies in the Twin Island nation. The lower house on Thursday passed a bill which gives oversight of the Antigua and Barbuda Hospitality Training Institute to the Education Ministry. We get more in this report from Jamie Roger of ABS News.
There was widespread support for the Hospitality Training Institute Amendment Bill, which was laid before Parliament by Tourism Minister the Honourable Charles Fernandez. The lion's share of the debate went to Education Minister, the Honourable Michael Brown, as he offered support for the bill, which places the Training Institute under his ministry. ABHTI focuses mainly on tourism-related areas and is intended to serve as one of the plans in the proposed university's multi-campus arrangement. The other campuses are the Antigua State College, the Five Islands campus, and the Antigua and Barbuda International Institute of Technology.
Mr. Speaker, the amendment to this bill, in writing, it only replaces the Minister of Tourism with the Minister of Education in the definition phase. But in practice, what it does, it allows for the amalgamation of all 4 campuses into one overall university structure.
Barbuda MP, the Honorable Trevor Walker, also expressed support for the legislation.
It's a very timely bill, and it's a bill that I think makes a lot of sense, given the fact that we are consolidating these institutions. And, Mr. Speaker, it is something that I think would go a long way to assist Antigua and Barbuda in moving forward.
The members also discussed the need to maintain a strong, relevant curriculum.
And ahead of Newsline Sport, Trinidad and Tobago's table tennis team missing out on the CAC Games. We'll explain why when we return. Sport is next.
This hurricane tip comes to you compliments the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency and the Caribbean Media Corporation. Be prepared. Develop an emergency communications plan. Make sure all family members know what to do, especially children.
When you buy a ticket on Liat, outside of the taxes paid, you're getting more than just a flight. You're getting well-trained, qualified, competent crew. The newest, fuel-efficient, environmentally friendly aircraft. The best aircraft maintenance process and people to get you there safely. More destinations and connections with partners than any airline in the region. All so that we can connect you to special moments with friends and family, festivals and fun. We connect you to your business associates, which helps you and the region's economies to grow. So there is more to the fare than the flight. Liat, the Caribbean Airlines, more than connecting the region.
Charity begins at home and ends abroad, as the saying goes. So for Tobago, the path to a sustainable tourism industry begins with everyone on the island. The recently launched Tourism Community Campaign is aiming to create greater awareness of the roles of Tobagonians in creating that success. This initiative will bring to life more visitors' attraction and activities to enhance the experience of vacationers on the island.
We continue with sporting developments in Trinidad and Tobago. A long-standing issue involving a top-ranked table tennis player has forced the entire team to miss the CAC Games, which begins Thursday in Colombia. The Twin Island Republic will not be participating because of a flawed selection process. At the center of the controversy is top-seeded foreign-based player Dexter St. Louis, who had put the Trinidad and Tobago Table Tennis Association in court over the selection process. TV6's Sergio Dufour tells us about TNT's non-representation at the CAC Games.
Several talking points have emerged following the case involving the exclusion of Dexter St. Louis from the Central American and Caribbean Games. 2 men are at the forefront, St. Louis and the president of the Table Tennis Association, Ian Joseph. The 2 men had issues dating back to the Commonwealth Games after St. Louis and Rian Chung were omitted from the team. The Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee intervened in the matter, resulting in St. Louis and Chung being able to play. The issue, though, was not resolved in its entirety and is still before the courts. St. Louis and Joseph therefore had issues before the CAC Games and the matter reached a boiling point. St. Louis was left out again when the TTTTA selection panel, inclusive of Joseph, PRO Sheridan Pear, General Secretary Elena Edwards and Executive Member Merle Bagu, finalized the team. St. Louis retained legal representation, and the TTOC used an arbitrary tribunal consisting of sports lawyers Tyrone Marcus, Stefan Fabian, and Christoph Brathwaite to make the judgment call. Their decision called for a reselection of the men's team, but the TTTTA was unable to comply, and no team was selected, leaving St. Louis once again considering legal action. At the center, the other players, Yuvraj Dukram, Curtis Humphreys, Aaron Wilson and Aaron Rupnarine were left out in the cold. It remains consistent. The case has been plagued with issues. However, Was there ever a quick fix solution? The TTTA president didn't think so.
They have asked that the 4 persons who sat and made the decision, Merle Bagu, who is the North Zone president, Sheldon Pierre, who is the PRO, Dave Williams, who is the East Zone secretary, and myself, they have asked us to recuse ourselves. So no, there is no one left unless we go to the common man on the street.
But what does the TTTA constitution state on the selection of the team? Under Chapter 2, the basic selection process outlined the 3 areas. Players must be active and are required to participate in tournaments at home or abroad. The world ranking will be considered, as well as LATTU, Commonwealth, and the CRTTF ranking. The ability for a podium finish and previous podium finishes within the last 9 months will be a requisite, and it goes on to state the listed tournaments for men and women. The answer to who gets picked for the team seems simple based on the above process. However, selection of the TTTA selection panel is more difficult to fix in a few days. The case presented several questions. How should the TTOC react to future issues which could jeopardize the participation of an entire team for one player? Is it a wake-up call for the local sporting bodies to review their constitution in preparation for future impending cases? So much questions, but there's one more. Is St. Louis the hero or villain in this matter? Are his actions just, or is St. Louis a nagging veteran? You decide.
Meanwhile, Guyana is expecting a good showing from its athletes at the CAC Games. Isan Griffith tells us more.
Guyana will be represented by 10 sport disciplines at the CAC Games. The largest will come from hockey and rugby. Boxing coach Terence Poole expressed confidence in his 2 boxers, Kevin Ollicock and Colin Lewis.
We'll have 2 boxers who qualify from the qualifier. Colin Lewis, 64 kilograms, and Kevin Ollicock, 56 kilograms. For now, the most I would say for boxing, they're training, and we expect to do their best come. I don't want to say much because winning right now is not a priority in Guyana sports. That's it for now.
Taekwondo coach Roland Thomas also expects a good result from his 3 athletes.
We expect quite a lot from these 2 players. They are very seasoned players. I have seen them fighting many occasions at very big games, and they have been doing exceedingly well. And as such, we expect quite a lot from these 2 athletes. I believe that I am putting my heart out on Mr. Adrian Spellin, because in that division that he's fighting, there's not a great deal of competition, but they will be competing a lot against some very world-class players. Yes, we do have the Cubans, we have the Central Americans, as Mr. Ramdani mentioned, and those countries, they are known for a lot of fighting. So boxing, I think they are okay in. They're very good in. Taekwondo, they'll be very good. And so we have a lot of grounds to cover, but I believe that Mr. Spellin can do quite well.
In track and field, a high-level team led by the country's 400-meter champion Winston George will be looking to bring back medals, according to coach Sham Johnny.
Make Guyana proud. However, athletics is just shortly listed 5 teams, 5 athletes, and we know now athletics is on track and field is on the rise. So our aim and purpose on this trip is to bring back PBs.
Over to cricket, Barbadian speedster Jofra Archer finished with an 8-wicket match haul as he bowled Sussex to a 28-run victory over Gloucestershire on Thursday to move to 100 first-class wickets. Resuming the final day of the county championship clash at College Ground on 30-for-2 in pursuit of 276, the hosts were dismissed for 247 in their second innings, with Archer picking up 2 of the 8 wickets to fall. He ended with 4 for 29 from 21 superb overs. Archer, who took 4 for 62 in Gloucestershire's first innings, claimed his final wicket of the innings when he had Ryan Higgins caught down the leg side for 12 with the score on 215 for 7. New ball partner Ollie Robinson snared up 4 for 49 to follow up his 2-wicket effort in the first innings. Earlier, Archer claimed one of the 2 early wickets to fall when he removed night watchman George Drizzle to a catch at the wicket for 5 in the day's 6th over. The 23-year-old, who made his first-class debut only 2 years ago, now has 92 wickets from 21 matches. 4-time Formula One world champion driver Lewis Hamilton has signed a contract that will see him continue to race for Mercedes for at least 2 more seasons. Hamilton, whose paternal grandparents hail from Grenada and who was honored by that Caribbean island during its 2008 independence celebrations, signed a new contract that will last until the end of 2020. The 33-year-old Briton will earn at least £30 million sterling a year, and that figure could go up to £40 million with bonuses. Hamilton said the new contract had been a formality since he sat down with Mercedes F1 boss Toto Wolff to begin discussions last winter. Mercedes have dominated F1 since the introduction of turbo hybrid engines in 2014, winning 4 consecutive drivers and constructors championship doubles. Hamilton has won 3 of those titles, with the 4th going to former teammate Nico Rosberg, who retired after becoming champion in 2016. And that's the sport. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Caribbean Newsline is brought to you by the Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc.
Her passion for what she believes is unmatched.
You couldn't, I wanted to get to the point where you can shake me off that perfect piece.
She's a book-off radio host, philanthropist, and motivational speaker.
And I said, I'm going to write you a check for $10,000, which I'm not.
Spirit, soul, and body.
To get them some help through the transition.
I'm Karita D, and you're listening to Girlfriend Get a Life.
Join leading media and communications executives as well as climate change experts in Kingston, Jamaica from August 13 to 15 for the Caribbean Broadcasting Union 49th Annual General Assembly. This year's assembly, held in partnership with the CARICOM Climate Change Center, explores the theme, Building Resilience to Climate Change, Business, Technology and Content Options for Caribbean Media. Featured presenters include the Honorable Dr. Rural Reid, Jamaica's Minister responsible for information, the region's Chief Climate Change Negotiator, Mr. Carlos Fuller, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, the Broadcasting Commission of Jamaica, and the International Telecommunications Union Caribbean Office. And broadcast manufacturers and media services enjoy special exhibition rates at this year's conference, joining premier exhibitor Eutelsat. For more information on discounted rates for delegates staying at the Jamaica Pegasus Hotel or flying on the official airline Caribbean Airlines, go to the CBU website or call the Secretariat. The CBU looks forward to welcoming you to this key conference on climate change and the Caribbean media.
Again, the major developments of this day: a pilot loses his life when his plane overshoots the runway at the Terence B. Lexham International Airport in the British Virgin Islands and ends up in the sea. And in sport, a long-standing issue involving a top-ranked Trinidad and Tobago table tennis player forces the entire team to miss the CAC Games. That's Caribbean Newsline. For news and sport around the clock, subscribe to CarnaNews.com. For more of our programming, log on to CaribVision.tv and subscribe to CaribVision's YouTube channel. We'll be back here again tomorrow. But from all of us at CMC News, thank you for watching and do have yourselves a good night.